Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Professor Ming's Strategic Insights. The United States launched a surprise attack against Venezuela on January the 3rd and captured their president, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife, Celia Flores. Both of them are sent to the United States and are going to face trials, a number of criminal charges against them. The news shocked the entire world. When I first saw the breaking news on TV, I couldn't believe, or I wasn't sure what I saw. I paused for a moment before I realized what I was looking at. Then, anyway, I came back to myself and ready for today's program. Anyway, since this is a very fresh news, all I can do today is to provide a preliminary analysis of the whole issue. And we're going to focus on China, Communist China, how they look at this issue and how they're going to respond. So this is what I'm going to do today. Okay, first thing first, how do the Beijing leaders, political leaders in Beijing, look at this thing? How do they react to this? I'm sure that this came as a surprise to them, a big surprise, a very big surprise. I think it goes beyond their wildest imagination. I don't think that they could imagine that Trump would do something like that. But anyway, he did it, and it surprised them. It came as a big shock, like I said. The second thing that came to their minds is their own security. They figure if Trump can do something to Venezuela's president, could Trump do something to me? That's what I call the dictator's instinct, or dictator's response. I suppose that after pausing a few moments, they'll figure out that they will be okay, because they would not believe the United States would do something to such a big country like Communist China or Russia or any big country. Anyway, a big country with very powerful military power and perhaps with nuclear weapons. That's something that Trump would not do. So they should be okay. They should be safe. But they will lift their level of security guard and try to rearrange their security measurements and things like that. The second thing they would do. Beijing has a very good reason to keep so close attention to this issue, because Beijing used to enjoy very good and very close relations with Venezuela. Politically, they have a what they call all-weather comprehensive strategic partnership, established since 2014. And Venezuela is almost considered the single most important partner in Latin America for Communist China. Although they have very different ideology, Venezuela is no communist regime. They don't abide by communism. But anyway, they have a very high degree of consensus with Communist China in questions like anti-hegemony, anti-unilateral sanction, anti-interference of domestic affairs by foreign countries, and things like that. And that's their political relationship in general. In terms of their economic cooperation, it's primarily centered around the energy. We all know that Venezuela is a country with the richest deposit of oil. So Communist China, or Beijing, has been buying oil from Venezuela. And Communist China is probably the single most buyer of Venezuela's oil ever since Venezuela is sanctioned by the world. So China supplies money, capital, and equipment and technology in exchange for Venezuela's oil, crude oil. And Chinese companies participate in infrastructure in Venezuela, such as highways, railroad, housing projects, electricity, telecommunication, agriculture, and mining, and so on and so forth. And in terms of their financial relationship, it's a highly uneven or a highly unequal relationship between the two, because China has been providing loans in the billions of US dollars to Venezuela in exchange for its oil. And the important thing is no strings attached, no strings attached. China does not Venezuela to do any political reforms like what the Western countries would demand Venezuela do. That's very important for an authoritarian regime like Venezuela, and that's a financial relationship. In terms of the military relationship, it's kind of limited, but it's very symbolic. There's no formal military alliance between the two countries, but China has been sending lots and lots of military equipment to Venezuela, like radar, jet planes, and armored vehicles. And Beijing is responsible for training Venezuela's military officers, soldiers, and so on and so forth. China also provides technological maintenance and logistic supports for Venezuela. And the most important thing is China does not have any military bases in Venezuela. So it's more like a strategic presence and diplomatic symbolism in Venezuela for China. Then it begs the question, the important question, how does China look at this whole thing? And how does China assess the negative impact, United States capture of Maduro's and his wife, and how does China assess the impact of this whole issue, this possible negative issues upon itself? Like I said, Venezuela is considered the most important or single most important partner in Latin America for Communist China. So if it's taken away or it's been attacked to a certain extent by the United States, that means that it will have a negative impact upon China in this area. Venezuela has a close relationship with countries like Cuba, Nicaragua, Bolivia, and some Caribbean countries. So Venezuela is like a strategic pivot or strategic foothold for Communist China in the area. By way of Venezuela, that Communist China can exercise its foreign influence to the area and has a connection, whether it be they make direct or indirect connection with the left-leaning regimes or anti-American regimes in the area. Now it's gone, the pivot is gone. And secondly, the American invasion proves one thing, that the Chinese military equipment, or at least the air defense system provided by China, by Communist China, is not so capable for dealing with countries like the United States. Venezuela has been claiming that it is very powerful. It's been buying military equipment from Communist China and from Russia. It has a comprehensive system of war fighting in the area, be them Army, Navy, Air Force, or even internet. Do you remember that President Maduro once showed the Huawei mobile he got from Xi Jinping and claiming this is the best mobile phone in the world? And it is so powerful that even CIA could not penetrate it. But it seems that it doesn't work this time. The next thing that comes to the mind of Beijing's leaders is oil, the oil of Venezuela. As we mentioned, Venezuela sells almost all its oil to Beijing, but it takes up only 5% of what Beijing needs for oil. So it does have some kind of a negative impact. But it's controllable for Beijing. But anyway, it is still a negative impact. The next thing is what we call the negative demonstration effect in the area. In the area, there are some countries who are pro-Beijing and who are pro-United States. But after this event or after this invasion, some of the countries, some of the left-leaning countries who are used to pro-Beijing may leaning toward the United States afterwards. So that's definitely not good for China in the area, with some exceptions, such as Cuba, Colombia, or Brazil to a certain extent. So to put it very briefly, as Beijing leaders sees it, United States invasion or surprise attack against Venezuela is a very negative impact, or does have a very negative impact upon Beijing's global strategy, and they have to take it very seriously. So the next question is, how are Beijing leaders going to respond to this challenge? The first thing we saw is that the first condemnation issued by Beijing, the spokesperson of PRC's foreign ministry issued a very strong condemnation publicly. And secondly, Beijing has brought the issue to the Security Council, to the United Nations, and both China, Communist China, and Russia condemn the United States very strongly. And next thing supposedly Beijing would do is to to join hands with some countries with some regional countries, such as Cuba, Colombia, or like I said, to a certain extent, Brazil, to condemn the United States. I'm not sure what kind of effect it can bring about, but anyway, there's something they would do. I guess the strongest countermeasure Beijing would take is from within the United States, and that's the most powerful countermeasures they can think of. For instance, they can incite some of the radical Democrats, especially the left-leaning Democrats inside the Congress or around the United States. And secondly, the American media, be them television networks or radio stations, newspapers, and of course, let's not forget about the influencers all over the United States. And then the third target that Communist China would aim would be universities around the United States, especially some left-leaning professors and who have been opinion leaders in areas like international relations or Chinese politics. And the last target the communists would think of is the think tanks in Washington, D.C. or elsewhere. So these are the things that we will see in the days to come. So by now, I guess aside from being surprised by the whole issue, I guess Beijing leaders will have to do a reassessment of President Trump. Ever since President Trump came back to the office, he launched the second wave of tariff warfare, and that falls within Beijing's strategic calculation. But a strike against Iran, against Iranian nuclear capacities is something that goes beyond their imagination. And this time, launch a surprise attack against Venezuela and capture their president is something that also goes beyond their imagination. So they're going to do a reassessment about Trump, about his personality, about the style of his decision making. So that's something that they would pay much attention to. So I guess from now on, what Beijing would do is to figure out what kind of things Trump would do for next step. What he would do in the tariff war between Washington and Beijing, and what kind of issues he would bring up in the possible meeting between Trump and Xi Jinping in the coming April, and also on the question of Taiwan Strait, and things like that. So they have to be to make some extra preparation for these issues. The last question is whether Communist China would escalate the whole thing to a different level is something that remains to be seen. My gut feeling tells me that if they want to use that as a bargaining chip or as a leverage against Trump on something else, like a tariff war, his visit to Beijing, or on Taiwan issue, and things like that, if they figure that they can use as a leverage or as a bargaining chip, then they will escalate. Otherwise, they will handle it very differently. But that's something that remains to be seen. So like I said, this is a very fresh news, and this is the only preliminary analysis we can provide at this moment. There'll be much more follow-ups to do in the future. And I suppose that's all I want to share with you today. I hope you like it. And please do subscribe to our program if you haven't done so, and share it with your friends. And do remember to click the icon bell. And that's all I want to share with you today, and I'll see you next time.